Er verwaltet aktuell 300 Millionen US-Dollar in seinem Fonds. Und wie er dieses Geld investiert und was er von LVMH, von Nike und auch von Alphabet hält, das verrät uns heute Fondslegende Guy Spier. Hi und herzlich willkommen hier in einem neuen Video auf meinem Kanal. Ich bin Timo und heute freue ich mich über den Besuch von Guy Spier. Guy Spier ist einer der größten, der bekanntesten und international renommiertesten Investmentfondsmanager der Welt. Guy hat den sogenannten Aquamarine Fund gegründet. Das ist sein eigener Fonds. 300 Millionen US-Dollar managt er dort aktuell und das in einem ziemlich konzentrierten Aktienportfolio. Übrigens muss Guy mit dem Aquamarine Fund tatsächlich auch diese 13F-Berichte abgeben. Also bedeutet, er muss da an die SEC quartalsweise auch diese Offenlegungspflichten erfüllen. Also wie das auch David Tepper, Bill Ackman und andere große Wall Street-Wale machen müssen. Guy ist jetzt nicht an der Wall Street angesiedelt. Er sitzt mit seinem Fonds in Zürich. Aber er hat auf jeden Fall an der Wall Street gearbeitet. Er hat dort angefangen als Investmentbanker und hat dann später quasi seinen eigenen Fonds aufgelegt und ja, ist wie gesagt aufgestiegen zu einem der international renommiertesten Anleger der Welt. Also insofern freue ich mich wirklich mal, einen von den Big Boys hier wirklich da zu haben. Also ist mir eine große Ehre, muss ich ganz ehrlicherweise sagen. Und ich kann euch jetzt schon sagen, dieses Gespräch ist super interessant. Denn Guy wird uns ganz ausführlich berichten, wie er in den Nullerjahren mal ein Mittagessen mit Warren Buffett verbracht hat. Ungefähr 3-4 Stunden saßen sie da zusammen. Und wie dieser Lunch-Termin Guys Leben verändert hat und auch seinen Blick auf die Investmentwelt, das wird uns auf jeden Fall hier verraten. Zudem sprechen wir über seine Anlageprinzipien, über seine Anlagephilosophie. Wir sprechen über konkrete Aktientitel, unter anderem LVMH, Nike und auch die Alphabet. Also das sind ja hier 3 Aktien, die auf jeden Fall auch hier in Deutschland unter Privatanlegern durchaus Beliebtheit haben. Und bei welchen Titeln Guy sagt, ja, finde ich gut. Und bei welchen Titeln er sagt, ja, also da sehe ich schon Probleme. Das wird er uns auf jeden Fall hier exklusiv verraten. Ein wichtiger Hinweis noch hier im Intro. Wir haben das Gespräch auf Englisch geführt. Ja, auf Englisch. Deswegen bitte hier einmal kurz auf Stopp drücken, bitte. All diejenigen, die also sich die Übersetzungsfunktion von YouTube einblenden lassen möchten. Aktiviert einfach die Untertitel. Dort gibt es auch eine Übersetzungsfunktion. Und dann könnt ihr dem Gespräch also auch sehr, sehr gut folgen, falls euch ja hier und da das Englisch dann ein bisschen zu schnell oder auch zu kompliziert ist. Also, ich freue mich wirklich, Guy hier zu Besuch zu haben. Daumen rauf bitte für dieses Video, Daumen rauf bitte für Guy Spier. Und ja, wenn ihr sagt, Timo, top, dass du so eine Investmentlegende organisieren konntest zum Gespräch, dann würde ich mich sehr über ein Abonnement meines Kanals freuen. Und jetzt keine weiteren Worte mehr. Viel Spaß mit meinem Gespräch mit Guy Spier. Hello Guy, a warm welcome. It's really a great honor for me to have you here on my YouTube channel. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, you know, it goes both ways. If anybody's interested, we had a wonderful chat just before it gets started. Really good. We both wanted to continue it. I feel honored to be with you, Timo. You're a lovely, lovely guy. And so I feel honored myself. So it goes both ways.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really, really glad to hear this. Let's jump into the topics. Many people in my community know that you are a very experienced professional investor, and your preferred way of investing is the so-called value investing. Could you tell us a little bit about your investment approach and your own investment philosophy?
Yeah, if I have an investment philosophy, I mean, I think that I think it's best told, explained in terms of a story of who I am, you know, and if I try and explain a philosophy dissociated with who I am, it doesn't make sense. So I think we were talking about my background, and at the time that I got interested in investing, I had done an MBA at Harvard Business School, but why had I done an MBA? Why had I not studied literature or mathematics or science or something? It's typical immigrant mindset where you don't feel economically safe and you want financial security. And so that was my primary motivation for getting into business school and continuing with a kind of like the kinds of jobs and professions that would earn me a high income. So that's before business school, I was in consulting. I worked at a firm called Braxton Associates. In Germany, you have McKinsey and Roland Berger, for example. And so then I got interested in finance because that's where the money is. You know, why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is. And so, but I got interested in finance with startup investing, investment banking, but anywhere around the money, if you like. And then when I was working as an investment banker, I picked up a book, The Intelligent Investor. I even can name the bookstore where I picked it up and where it was, downtown Manhattan. And it made so much sense to me. What's my point to you is that I got interested in investing after I read that book. So I was not interested in investing first. I read Ben Graham's Intelligent Investor. I read the Warren Buffett introduction. And for the first time in this crazy world of investment banking, with various people ripping various other people off, I realized, oh, this makes sense. I can do this. I want to do this. My point to you is I didn't say, I want to become an investor. What philosophy should I use? I discovered the philosophy and said, that's something I want to do. And, you know, I think everybody now is a value investor. Everybody's a fundamental investor, I think. Maybe not the people who buy Bitcoin, but pretty much everybody else. What's my point? And then I'll hand the mic over to you, is that in the time that I got started, people proudly would say, I'm a momentum investor. I look at the chart and I follow the trend. The trend is your friend. If the chart's going up, I buy it. And if it stops going up, I sell it. And very few people were fundamental investors who said, I don't look at the chart, I look at where the business is going. But now everybody looks at the business. Everybody's a fundamental investor, if you like, which is effectively what value investing is.
All right. You also mentioned Warren Buffett. Yeah. And I know that you once had a meeting with him. I think it was a lunch meeting, a dinner. I don't know. How did this come?
Yeah, exactly. It was a 3.5-hour lunch. It was lunch, but we finished at around 3:30 or 4 maybe. It was at Smith and Wollensky's, which is a famous steakhouse in New York. And I got to go for lunch with him, not because he wanted to meet me, but because Monish, my Indian friend, and I had bid on a charity lunch. And the winner of that charity lunch gets to take up to 8 people to have lunch with Warren Buffett. So Monish Pabrai convinced me to do it, he showed me the logic of why it made sense to do it. I thought it was a good idea. I bid with him. So the agreement was if we won, I would take my wife and he would take his wife and his 2 daughters. He bid 2/3 of the winning bid. I bid 1/3. We paid $650,000 or so to have the lunch. We won in 2007 and the lunch happened in 2008. And the last time Warren Buffett did that, the lunch went for $20 million. So you could see that we got a bargain. But so we had that lunch. It lasted 3 hours. It was an amazing time. We were there really to say thank you to him, but we learned an awful lot from it. I learned an awful lot in that lunch, and it made me realize that sometimes it's really good to be in a room with somebody. And subsequent to that, I mean, every year I go to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, and I know I'm kind of preempting the question because I know it's around the corner. What relationship do I have with Warren Buffett today? So subsequent to that lunch, every year for about 10 years, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett would host a group of 400 or 500 people who'd been at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting for a brunch and the Sunday afterwards. And Monish and I were invited to that. And through that, I met a whole host of people, very interesting people. Like you can imagine the kind of people who are invited to that are some of the best people who go to Berkshire. And he gave us a tour of his offices once. And I went for lunch a couple of times with Debbie Bosanek, his assistant. And I can say that I have a lovely relationship with Debbie Bosanek and her family. And Warren Buffett, I would say that, he has no reason to speak to me, and I have no reason to speak to him. But if I had my ideal business, if there was if I could speak to the people who control IKEA and they were willing to sell it, they're not willing to sell it. But if they were, then, and they told me that, I would call up Debbie Bosanek and say, Debbie, we have IKEA that's ready to be sold, but I need to speak to Warren first. And then Warren would get on the phone with me, and he'd be happy to get on the phone with me. But it's that kind of relationship. If I tried to bother him, then it would be shut down very quickly. So I have a line in, so long as I don't abuse it.
Yeah, okay, I see the point. What's your impression of Warren Buffett as a human being, and do you have some key takeaways out of this lunch meeting that were that changed your mindset or your investment approach? Could you tell us about this?
How long do you have?
I have all the day. I have all the day.
Yeah,
no worries.
It was mind-blowing and life-changing for me. So first of all, before I got to the lunch, at the time before the lunch, I had a fee structure that was a kind of a hedge fund 1 in 20. And I was very uncomfortable with the fact that Monash already didn't charge a management fee. And Warren, of course, takes a salary of $100,000 a year, and that's it. And so in advance of the lunch, I changed my fee structure. And it was very important to me to do that. And all the lawyers and advisors, they said, why are you doing this? And I used the lunch. I said, listen, I'm going to have lunch with Warren Buffett. He charges his investors $100,000 a year salary. That's it. I don't want to show up there as a greedy fund manager. I need to have a zero management fee. So before the lunch, I was already different. At the lunch, one of the first questions I asked him, because I was already thinking about it, I said, I don't know what you think about it, but I'm thinking of moving to Zurich. What do you think? As if Warren can answer that question. But he did say, look, you can do this business from anywhere, so why not Zurich? Zurich's a serious place. Why not? And it gave me a little bit more comfortable to take the decision to move to Zurich, Switzerland. So those were a few minor things that already changed me at the lunch. But I think that Warren Buffett as a person, first of all, at the end of the lunch, I really was exhausted. He's got unlimited energy, it felt like to me. And I've since had conversations. I mean, somebody who knows him far better than me, Alice Schroeder, who wrote the book, The Snowball, I shared that experience with her, and she said, yes, I know what you mean. You speak to Warren Buffett, and it's like after an hour or two, I'm tired, and he wants to keep going. And I think this guy is in his 80s, and I'm in my late 40s, and he's tired and I'm not. I'm tired and he's not. What's going on? I would also say that people talk a lot now about neurodiversity. So I was accused by my daughter of having not Asperger's, but autism. And I said to my daughter, what do you mean I have autism? She said, well, high functioning autism, but autism. And actually, I since discovered that she may have a point. I think that obviously Warren Buffett is very, very high functioning, but he's also doesn't have all of the charm that he has with human beings. In a way, he had to learn that. And there are various stories that I've heard, and I think it's in the biographies as well. His first wife, Susie Buffett, really, really helped him with that. He actually didn't know how to talk to people. He was the kind of guy who looked at his shoe, like in the accounting department, they look at their shoes all day, So what's my point? He's just a very, very unusual mind. He's not, many CEOs of companies, there are people who they have very high emotional intelligence. They're very good and present with people. And he's learned those skills, but it's clear that he's learned those skills. He didn't have them up front.
Yeah.
And he's much happier reading and looking at his shoes. And the last thing I'll say about my experience with Warren Buffett in the room is that, he's an extremely unusual person in that what really makes him happy is to sit and read annual reports. I like reading all sorts of things. I'm interested in everything. Not Warren Buffett. He, at the time, any books that he would send them to Charlie Munger to read. And if Charlie Munger told him that he should read the book, then he would read the book. But Charlie Munger, I feel, was interested in many, many things. So, very, very unusual guy. And I didn't have to be there for more than an hour or two to understand that I'm not him. He's very different to me. And being at the lunch, and really it paid off very well for me in many ways, but including this way. By the end of the lunch, I understood that I needed to stop trying to be Warren Buffett. That was not going to work for me in my life. There's the famous saying, a famous chess player, Bobby Fischer, or who's the world champion right now, the Swedish guy, Carlsen.
Magnus Carlsen. Yeah.
Do you know how you beat Magnus Carlsen? Play him at anything but chess. So he's extremely good at chess, but if you try and play him at tennis, I'm a probably better psych. So the bottom line is, I came out of that lunch understanding that the desire to be better than Warren Buffett would be a very, very dumb way to live my life. And what I needed to do was be the best version of myself that I could be. So, because he can't win at that at all. He cannot win at being better than Guy Spier, because I'm better Guy Spier than he will ever be. So those are just a few insights into having lunch with him. I'll leave you with the last message that if you admire somebody and you're thinking about them a lot, then it is not a dumb idea to spend money, if you have the money to spend, to find yourself in the same room as them, because sometimes you have to be in the room to learn what you're going to learn. And that was the case for me.
That sounds a bit to me as if you found your own investment identity after that lunch, because you learned, okay, I'm not Warren Buffett. I cannot be this. I cannot reach this. I have to be Guy Spier, and I have to do Guy Spier investments. Can I translate it like this?
Yes, I think I would say more as an individual. I have to live my life as Guy Spier. So here are some of the things that I like doing that Warren Buffett doesn't like doing. I like wine. I particularly like red wine. I like cycling. I like looking at art. I like to be in nice places like the south of France, and I like going to the theatre in London, and I like the mountains in Zurich, and I like skiing. Warren Buffett doesn't like any of those things. I like it. I like my sports car with the 911 Cabriolet. I like those things. So stop trying to deny myself that. When it comes to investing, yes, I have a different investment identity to Warren Buffett, but I'm also a worse investor. I'm not as good as Warren Buffett, and I can explain why for 1,000 different reasons. I'm not as good an investor as a number of other people that I can describe. And so when it comes to investment identity, because I know that I'm not the best, I want to learn from the best. So I think I'm not trying to distinguish myself from Warren Buffett when it comes to investments. I'll give you a specific example. Monish Pabrai talked about being a shameless cloner. People say, well, why should I invest in your fund? You have Berkshire Hathaway, you have American Express, you have Bank of America. And my answer is yes. I've studied Warren Buffett's investments, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And so I don't say to myself, well, I have to have different investments to Warren Buffett. And I've been thinking, because the share price has come down a lot, Occidental Petroleum is another company that I might buy that's already in the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. So I'm not trying to carve out a different identity for myself, if you like, because I'm not as great an investor as Warren Buffett. So if he does something that makes sense, why wouldn't I follow him?
Okay. That's very funny that you mentioned Occidental Petroleum, because this is something I also analyzed a few days ago, because I had Shell, TotalEnergies, and Occidental. That were my favorite picks in investing into an oil company. But my pick was TotalEnergies, because higher dividend, the stock or the company in general is a bit more conservative in my view. But why is Occidental so interesting right now for you?
I think that I had the hardest time trying to figure out why Warren Buffett was investing in an oil company, and I haven't done the work. It seems to me like you've done more work, but 2 years ago, I don't know what I'd read, but I became aware that there's a company here whose name I can't remember that does direct carbon capture directly from the air, and I understood. I came to an understanding of why we need so I've been a climate skeptic. I'm a big fan. I've read a lot of Bjorn Lomborg's work, and basically Bjorn Lomborg says, yes, we can spend a lot of money to try to slow down global warming, but the same money could be better spent elsewhere, is basically Bjorn Lomborg's argument. And I kind of bought into that. And then, I started to understand that the problem with climate change is that we don't know what's going to happen. It's systemic risk. And, it's better not to have the systemic risk. And anyway, I could get into that if you want to get into it. I learned about a direct air capture company based here in Switzerland that's just taking carbon out of the air. And I actually spent some money of my own personal money to buy some carbon credits. And I asked them, what do they do with the carbon once they've captured it? And there's whole ways to store the carbon underground. And then I learned that, and this brings us back to Occidental Petroleum, that some of the best places to store carbon are controlled by Occidental Petroleum, and it's where they've previously taken gas out of the ground. And for some reason, this particular nature of the rock in that part, it's somewhere in Texas, is a very, very good place and they have a significant business, and they're investing significantly in carbon capture. And I realized that at least Occidental Petroleum is thinking very, very hard about what it means to be a manager of their oil resources, and also a manager of providing energy, hopefully clean energy, transforming themselves more of an energy company into a chemical company and carbon storage company. And I realized that's all part of their business plan, if you like. So that made me think of maybe wanting to invest with them, especially if the prices come down quite a lot. And what I've not analyzed Total or Exxon, but what you get with the Berkshire Hathaway investment is you get rational capital allocation, and you get lack of control by regulatory, government, political, all of those things. It's less likely to happen with Occidental Petroleum. If I think of Total, I think of basically an arm of the French state. And so I'm less confident that they will allocate capital well. Having said that, I love France. My parents have a place in the south of France. I actually do own a French company. And that's not to say that all French companies don't have bad capital allocation. And I've been trying. I would love to own more companies in France just because I like visiting it. But Total isn't one of them.
Okay. Which one do you own in France?
Yeah, it's not a particularly innovative or creative idea. but over the last 5 or 6 years, I've learned more and more about the luxury industry. And so I don't like so LVMH, I don't like their products that much.
Yeah.
I like products from other companies more, but I think that in terms of managing their collection of brands, LVMH is superlative. They really got just they're really, really smart about how they go about it, and I've just continued to be impressed. So right now LVMH shares are down, so are Occidental Petroleum. And, maybe I should I'm not sure where I'd go put money. My problem with LVMH is I need to attend an annual meeting. I haven't yet, but, family control, sometimes it works extraordinarily well. A famous American investor called Tom Russo has talked about how sometimes a family is the best way to preserve a corporate culture. And I also worry a little bit about LVMH that it's a fragile corporate culture because, you're constantly around movie stars, tennis players, famous people. You're paying high amounts of money to advertise in certain magazines, and that could get out of hand very quickly. Having said that, they dominate in a way that's just unbelievable.
Yeah. A very interesting point. Don't you think that LVMH, we say in German, LVMH, is something like the Berkshire Hathaway of the luxury industry, because they also bought a lot of different brands and put them below their LVMH
main brand. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so why did Warren Buffett never invest in LVMH? And maybe I don't mind that he didn't invest, but I don't 100% know the reasons. And right now, if I had the opportunity to sit down with Warren for half an hour to an hour, I'd want to say, look, I'm just curious to know, I'm certain that you understand the business dynamics of what takes place. And there's many things. So for example, you need large store formats. So the LVMH store in any particular city will be quite likely in the best or second best location. It'll be a large store, and they can put all sorts of products through, all sorts of things that are going on there. The economics is very, very positive, and I think that the economics is getting better for the large brand aggregators like LVMH. So I think he understands the economics. I've never just come across some business where I understand the economics better than Warren Buffett. So then, and at times it's been cheap enough. So why? So I think that it's a complicated business model from this perspective. You constantly need to be at the front of mind of the people who are willing to spend a lot of money on their own image, or relatively a lot of money. And therefore, you have to have relationships, as I've said before, with Roger Federer, with Alicia Vikander, you need to get deals with Formula One, and those are kind of places where you can spend a lot of money very quickly and not get much result. And I think that Warren doesn't like that very much. He doesn't like the idea that he would attract those kinds of people into his mix. So it's got a very different culture to Berkshire Hathaway, but it is a conglomerate of sorts. But it's not a conglomerate in this way, in that I think that one of the things that LVMH does is they will start a manager in a small brand that probably you and I haven't even heard of, and they'll try them out. They'll learn things in that brand, and then they'll move them to another brand. And they have the powerhouse blockbuster brands like Dior or Louis Vuitton or La Veuve Clicquot, which I just saw a big ad for. And then they have lots of playgrounds for people to kind of see what they can do before they move them to the big brands. And so there's an enormous amount of knowledge that is very hard to discern that the management picks up in various different places along the way. But it's specific to luxury goods, whereas Berkshire Hathaway is just all over the place.
But I see the point. All right. Yeah. Just one question, because the German investors, the German retail investors, really love LVMH as well, and I can feel it, because even if I am not invested yet, because LVMH was a really great success story in 2010 up to 2022. But right now, maybe the main problem with the LVMH stock is that investors do not know, is that a growth company or is that a value company that offers us very good dividends? And maybe it's not really clear at the moment. How could we evaluate LVMH? What is it? Would you say it's a growth company still?
I mean, I think it is, actually, because I think that I don't know where I read about this, but they've tried to create a luxury brand in luggage in the US. The closest I believe they got to it was Coach. Was a kind of a nice brand, but it's a very unusual thing. What has to come together for people to really, really want to pay a premium for the kinds of products that an LVMH produces. And I don't think that's going away. And I think that in 100 or 200 years, in a way, LVMH is selling Paris and Milan a little bit. And those places, what happened in the last 500 years in Europe, starting with the Renaissance, didn't happen anywhere else in the world. You don't have to be a colonial racist to understand that. No other place in the world produced the things that were produced here in Europe. And people want a part of it. And it's not enough to say we make the best bags in the United States and it's called Coach. It needs to be made in Italy. So I think that the demand for that will continue to grow. So I think it is a growth company. But even if it's not, I don't know how much time you spend in Paris. I could go on, but one of the things that really just was very convincing to me was I used to live in Paris for a couple of years, and opposite the river on the right bank, but just on the other side of the river to, the 6th arrondissement is a place called La Samaritaine. And when I lived there, La Samaritaine was a rundown old department store. And LVMH got control of the whole site. And now it's a very, very high-end department store, which they use to promote their brands and a few other brands as well. And the real estate has become extraordinarily valuable. But I'll give you just two other examples. LVMH is constantly doing partnerships with, for example, the Louvre in Paris. So the kind of like, in your mind, the LVMH brands somehow are up there with the greatest art and the greatest locations, and that, I think, is a very, very hard asset to replicate. And so and it continues to rejuvenate itself and will continue to rejuvenate itself. So what could stop it? If we had nuclear war and all of France is destroyed, then maybe it would destroy it. So there are things, and Coca-Cola would survive, by the way. So you could say, and I think that Warren Buffett, maybe he would come back to me and say, if I'm going to buy a branded products company, I'd rather put more capital into Coca-Cola. And in a way, Coca-Cola is more mass market. More people can develop a relationship with it. Coca-Cola has extraordinary strengths as well, and it's very simple. In Coca-Cola, you have to sponsor the World Cup, you have to sponsor the Olympic Games, you have to be in. It's simpler. Whereas in LVMH, you have to be very creative. They are very creative. They claim to be very creative, but do you really want to rely as an investor on the creativity of your employees, which is kind of something that maybe comes and goes? You have to think, we have a relationship with Roger Federer. How can we use Roger Federer to promote our brands? How will we use him right now? How should we use them in the future? And that takes creativity, but they've been extraordinarily good at it. So
yeah. So would you say that, for example, then Nike is no investment pick for you at the moment, because Nike has also a certain value. It has a very good brand. You know it everywhere in the world. Everybody knows the logo and so on. But to do the turnaround in a operational way, you have to also trust the creativity of the whole staff of the company. And this is something you do not like that much in your own portfolio. What would you say?
It's a really fascinating question, because 15 years ago, I considered very seriously actually, I would have made a lot of money over the last 15 years in Nike. The Nike, I mean, they were just getting into golf, and they just signed Tiger Woods, and so they're getting away from running. They were just getting into soccer. Soccer was a big deal for them. And you had this sense that Nike was going to dominate and be a perennial brand forever and ever and ever. And it was never going to go away, and they could just sit there and dominate. And then, and now it's not so clear anymore if they're that or not. And you have new brands emerging, like On Shoes, which are just going from strength to strength. And I thought to myself, On Shoes can only be a marginal player in that industry, but consumer tastes shift, and there's a sense, I think, that the people are kind of tired of Nike, that they've had enough of it, and they want to try something new. And you don't really want to be in industries where people get tired of your brand. Another one that was a real shock to me, I can tell you, is that Harley Davidson. I own shares of Harley Davidson for a while, and I sold them because during the financial crisis, Berkshire Hathaway lent money to Harley Davidson, where they had trouble raising money, fixed income debt in the public markets. And I was always interested, and it was a question at one of the Berkshire meetings: why didn't you just buy the shares? You would have made more money. And Warren Buffett said, well, I feel more comfortable with the debt. I'm not so sure that I feel so comfortable investing in that brand. And my point was, this is a brand that people tattoo into their arms. So this is not my line. It came from somebody else. And they have clubs celebrating Harley Davidson. How can you not be concerned about, how could you not think that Harley Davidson is going to be as durable as Coca-Cola? The fact of the matter is, Jochen Zeitz came into that company seeking to rejuvenate the brand. It's not clear that he's succeeded. The bottom line is, the Harley Davidson brand is very popular with people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Not so popular for people who in their 20s and 30s, and they haven't been able to make that jump. And now with electrification, so what's my point? There are brands that have a long run, 40, 50 years, and then they just never make it back to the way they were before, because tastes shift and tastes change. And so I don't know if Nike is one of those. And if you and I guess the bottom line is, and I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but if you have a good capital allocator and they make the right decisions, you can still make money out of the declining brand, but you have to take some really tough decisions, because you have to. So very early in my career, this is direct analogy to Nike, I came across a company called Everlast. Everlast is a boxing apparel brand. If you look at boxing movies, if you look at Muhammad Ali boxing, most of the time he has the brand Everlast. Everlast was a publicly traded company for a while. It was a family that controlled the brand. And then it was bought by a British retailer called Michael Ashley. I don't remember the name of his Sports Direct is the company. And I had this I had this grandiose of ideas because it was tiny market cap. It was $30 million market cap. I said, this is just like Nike. They, we have Everlast in movies. We have Everlast on famous posters with Muhammad Ali and other famous boxers. We can put money behind this brand. We can become a growth story. This can become as ubiquitous in certain kinds of sports as Nike is in running and golf and tennis and other sports. And this is amazing. And I was so upset because I didn't have enough money to control it when Michael Ashley or Sports Direct bought the company, and they did the exact opposite. They just said, we're going to treat this brand as a cash cow. We're not going to put any money behind it. We're going to discount every single apparel we can make, piece of apparel that we can make with it. And we're going to earn a return by just crushing. And now you can still buy Everlast t-shirts, but they're discounted. They're not in a special Nike store. What's my point? I think that was the right thing to do with the Everlast brand. I think that the money that they would have put behind trying to build it up, or that I would have tried to put behind it, building it up, would have been a complete waste of money, if you like. So you take it, so it's possible that the best thing Nike should do is say, we're a company that has a great past and a not so great future, and therefore we're going to slash and burn, and we're just going to drive all the cash out of it. That's all we're going to do. And
Bill Ackman doesn't like what you are saying right now.
Is he still an owner of Nike? Because I read somewhere that he sold his shares of Nike.
Yes, I think he sold the direct shares, but he bought some call options, I think. I think he changed it. But so I don't know.
Yeah, it's worth saying. I mean, in terms of watching investors' moves, Warren Buffett doesn't do call options and puts and all of those things. Carl Icahn does. And it's now clear that Bill Ackman does as well. Sometimes it's quite possible for an investor to camouflage the moves in the market. That what you see is the total opposite of what's going on. So I wouldn't read anything into that. But it's scary because when Nike's just hired, they've just done a sponsorship deal with Tiger Woods, and they've got Andrew Agassi, and they've got all these other stars there. You think Nike can do no wrong. They're going to go from strength to strength. And then suddenly the world changes and you realize, well, maybe it's not so great anymore,
Let's switch over maybe at this point to some brands or companies or even stocks that you are more interested in, or you said the word, you want to find the best capital allocators. Which companies do you see at the moment as the most attractive capital allocators we have right now and you like to invest in?
So it's worth saying that, even better than a company that has a good capital allocator at the helm. I mean, a few good capital allocators, as we know, Berkshire Hathaway has got Warren Buffett and even Greg Abel and Ted Wexler, and Todd Combs will do fine. Markel has got a great capital allocator in Tom Gaynor. There's a company called Graham. So this is the former owner of the Washington Post. Those are great capital allocators. But even better than a great capital allocator is a business that doesn't require you to be super smart to be a great capital allocator. So it's got a cookie cutter, repeatable thing that you can just do. And if the numbers work out and you just do it, the example would be if you're McDonald's opening pizza stores, opening hamburger stores. The economics of each store is very, very straightforward, and it's not hard to be a great capital allocator there. I mean, I think there are very few businesses that make it easier to be a good capital allocator, and unfortunately, most of those businesses are extremely expensive in terms of valuation. So, and I can name them. I'm happy to name them if you like.
Of course.
But my point to you is, I'm more interested in finding a business where capital allocation decisions are easy than finding a business that has. If you have a good capital allocator, but they're in the wrong business, then it's not going to help them much. Whereas if you're in McDonald's, it's going to be very easy to look like a good capital allocator. And in terms of those, I think that what I'd be really interested to find, but I haven't been successful very much, is to find those businesses before they're huge. They're just getting going, And it's worth saying, I mean, one of the strongest performers in my portfolio right now is a company, BYD, the Japanese, the Chinese auto manufacturer. So here's an example. BYD research scientists and technical people get paid like $12,000 to $15,000 a year in China. By contrast, Tesla or any German or North American car manufacturing company, to get the top talent, they're paying $150,000 a year. They just have, you and I would look like innovative geniuses running a bunch of engineers who getting paid 1/10 of the salary as people in the United States or Germany. So again, I think that we sometimes think that you have to be genius level capital allocator and better to just be in the right business, if you like. But I mean, it keeps something coming to my mind, and I don't understand it well enough, but everybody's building swimming pools. Global warming, everybody wants swimming pools. It turns out that keeping a swimming pool is kind of like, it needs its own special pharmaceuticals or special chemicals to keep running, and devices and equipment, all sorts of things. There's a company in the United States called Pool Corporation, which is so the management of that company at some point can develop a new distribution center when there is enough concentration of swimming pools, enough concentration of people buying consumables in an area. And it's a business that slowly grows by building new distribution centers. It seems to be a relatively easy capital allocation decision. And but it's very, very expensive. all of these businesses are very expensive. Very important point to make that it's taken me such a long time to really get my head around is that the easiest place to end up making very, very high returns is in these better businesses. And when you look at these better businesses, you discover that if you want to buy them for a single-digit multiple, it's never going to happen, or even a low double-digit multiple. You have to be willing to pay up, but it's very, very hard to pay up. But, maybe I should have bought Pool Corporation. I mean, it's never traded below 30 times earnings. But with 30 times earnings, it's compounded at a very, very high rate, interestingly enough, Moody's, you could have bought Moody's in the after the financial crisis, and so every now and then those businesses do come available at a decent price,
What do you think of the Mac 7 right now? Because they are also great compounders. Oftentimes they have this subscription, a business model where you have a certain security concerning the good plannable revenues year on year on year. Do you also think that they are a little bit overpriced, overvalued right now? Or what do you think of the?
It's very hard to say. I mean, every time I've looked at the accounts of, just take Google and Meta, it's the amounts of money that they make and the growth that they have is just fucking obscene. This year they made $30 million in free cash. The next year it's 45. The next year it's 70. And you think, holy fucking moly, how does this work? And there's a law called, I think I'm right in saying it's called Metcalfe's law. So I'm going to do just a little bit of mathematics with you here. So there's a guy called Reed, and he said the value of the network is a function of, so like if X is the number of people in the network, number of phones in the phone company's network, then it's to the power 2. So it grows with the square of the number of the people in the network. Does that make sense? And then Metcalfe's law, if I'm not mistaken, is, take a number 2 and raise it to the power of the number of people in the network, which is more than exponential. It's just ridiculous how the value of such a network grows. And in the case of Meta and in Google and in these other companies, the barrier to entry is a very, very unusual thing, that as your business gets better, the barriers to entry get even more difficult. And so these businesses are kind of like exploding bombs that keep exploding, if you like, and getting better and better and better. But if something can't go on forever, it usually doesn't. As somebody said that, I don't know who. So I understand that. It would have been nice. I had in my office, I was in 666 Fifth Avenue, and I had an Asian girl who was at NYU, and she says, Google is going public, and I'm going to buy shares in Google. And we were all using Google at that point, as we'd all switched from Alta Vista browser, web search to Google. And I said, I don't do tech. What I needed then was to put any amount of money into Google and just hold on to it, and it would have dwarfed any other investment that I would have made. But now, Charlie Munger used to say that there are companies that end up surfing a wave. He talked about Intel, of surfing a wave. You had this kind of a duopoly between Intel and Microsoft. And but you don't know when they'll get knocked off their wave. And so I think there's been a big moment now in the last 6 months between, with this new AI moment, where people stopped and said, is it going to hurt or help Google or Microsoft or Meta? And I think that it's going to help them. So it actually makes the moat even bigger. But someday something will come along that will rip their moat to shreds. And I don't know if that's happening in a year's time or in 50 years' time. But I believe I'm a user of Salesforce, and they keep raising our prices on us every year. And I think that their business is vulnerable, that sooner or later, everything that Salesforce does can be done with AI. And I will own my own data anyway. They can't stop me from owning my own data. And so I will download my data, and I don't need Salesforce and their high prices to do what an artificial intelligence can do for me. So I think that Salesforce is more vulnerable than Google, let's say, but Google is also vulnerable at some point. The question is, is it vulnerable today, or is it going to come around in 20 years? And that is anybody's guess. So I own a little bit of Google. I decided, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, I decided I'm sick of not owning these things, these businesses that just keep getting better and better and better. I need to get on the inside and understand what's going on the inside. And there's something about owning the shares that makes it different to not owning the shares. So I own shares of Google. And it's partly why I can give, if there are insights, why I can give you the insights that I have right now. But I don't particularly want to buy more.
Oh, okay. But that would be very, very interesting for me, because Google is also a very big position in my core investment portfolio. And I don't know why the market says, okay, Google forward earnings per share is something like, ratio is something like 15 or 16 at the moment. So this is so cheap.
Yeah, well, I would say, the fact that I don't want to buy more doesn't mean that you shouldn't own it, and I just, and even I would say, imagine you don't want to buy more. That doesn't mean you have to sell. And I have had the longest time explaining this to my father, where he would say, well, is it over or undervalued? And I kind of would say to my father, look, it goes like this, I think that the value is take a hypothetical company. I said I think that the value is about 100. So if I see the shares are at 50, it makes sense that I would buy. But I don't really know where the value is, and I don't really know where the value is growing. So it's not like the value goes to 101 and then I sell, or even it goes to 120 or 150. I don't know. And there's nothing wrong, especially in Google's case, to just let it run. And that is a very rational decision in my case, in my opinion, to make. And let's say you buy it at 50 and it goes to 120, yeah, and you say, well, I think the intrinsic value is 100, but I don't really know. I think it's perfectly rational to just let it sit there and not play with it, you know? And so it's no problem that I say I wouldn't want to buy it. Well, you wouldn't want to buy it, but you're going to leave the shares in there, you know? And just like leave it alone, you know? Go play golf or something. Yeah, talk to me.
I'm more a tennis guy, but maybe golf.
Tennis is fine, you know? When you come to Zurich, maybe we'll play tennis. We have my wife doesn't like. I don't play very well, but I play. I don't mind playing.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would love to.
Yeah. When you come to Zurich, let us know. It's a beautiful place. It's up with I shouldn't say this. I won't say publicly where it is, but where we play tennis is very beautiful. So,
okay. Guy, let me come to my final question right now. Are you also looking for some opportunities to invest here in Germany? Do you think we have companies that are worth giving it a look from your personal perspective?
I mean, you know, absolutely. I think that when I started looking at fundamental analysis of companies, it was hard to get information on German companies. And I think it was certainly the case for Swiss companies, but sometimes they didn't even produce a cash flow statement. So, and sort of like some family-controlled businesses, especially, they were particularly difficult to understand. But Germany is the home of some of the greatest brands on the planet. If you just look at brands, and I'm forgetting the name of, brand that I grew up with. We were talking earlier about me growing up in German households outside of Germany. So Nivea is a beautiful brand for me. I love it, and I can't remember the name of the company that controls it.
Beiersdorf,
yeah, always too expensive, and two brothers I think who control it. But would I love to own that brand? Who wouldn't like to own that brand? It's an amazing company. And there have been others along the way that I've looked at reasonably closely, but always ended up not investing. So I can't say that I've ever. Actually, a friend of mine was in the office the other day. We were talking a bit about BASF, which is a kind of an interesting turnaround with their purchase of Monsanto. I should look more closely. And, I've been using AI. So I've been using ChatGPT to ask it interesting questions rather than ask an analyst. I say, could you find me a list of companies that ... And actually, every now and then it throws up a number of German companies for me to look at. That none of them are coming to mind right now. But I have no problem, would be very happy to invest in a German company, but it hasn't happened yet. The closest contact I've had with a German company recently is with this company called Louis Detlev, who it's actually owned by Berkshire Hathaway. It's the one company that's owned by Berkshire Hathaway. It's a retailer of motorcycle apparel and equipment around a motorcycle. Joachim Gruber, I think is his last name. I can't believe I don't remember his last name. Lives in Hamburg. Beautiful little business. It's no longer publicly traded, but so yeah, I'd be fine investing in Germany.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Guy, it was very fun. Thank you so much for your input, your insights, your thoughts, sharing here with me and my community. I feel very honored, as I said at the beginning. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, great pleasure. I hope that I do have a little bit of more than a little bit of imposter syndrome. I have no idea why people want to talk to me. I feel very honored that you want to talk to me. I'm blown away that people want to listen to what I have to say. I think that I will leave one word with your audience, which is that, I am no different. Yes, maybe I have a little bit more experience, but you can do just as well as I can. You probably can even do better, And another word I'd leave with your audience: if you ever want to send me any investment ideas, feel free, because you may see things that I may not see, and you've said them once you've bought them, no problem. Und ich bin sehr dankbar, dass wir das Gespräch auf Englisch gemacht haben, weil ich wäre nicht so fließend gewesen auf Deutsch. Aber Dankeschön, dass du, Timo, mein schönes Englisch gehört hast und du hast mich nicht forciert, auf Deutsch zu reden.
Auf jeden Fall. Und danke, dass du mein schlechtes Englisch in Kauf genommen hast.
Dein Englisch ist perfekt. So,
danke.
Yeah. So we got some German in at the end, not at the beginning. So
yeah, stimmt.
Yeah. Good. Well, thanks. Thanks for the time.
So much.
Yeah. I look forward to meeting in person. Let Chantal know when you're in town, and maybe something works out. I'd be fine. If it works, I'd be lovely to play tennis with you.
Okay, all right. Let's play.
Yeah.
So, das war mein Gespräch mit Guy Spier. Ja, wow. Also ich bin ehrlicherweise ein bisschen geflasht, weil ich rede ja sehr, sehr oft und auch super gerne mit Asset Managern hier aus der Dachregion. Und ich liebe diese Gespräche ehrlicherweise, weil ich da natürlich auch sehr, sehr viel Input für meine eigene Investmentstrategie, für mein Portfolio herausziehen kann. Aber ich muss sagen, dass jetzt dieses Gespräch hier nochmal was ganz Besonderes für mich war, einfach weil dort sozusagen dieser internationale Blickwinkel nochmal mit draufkommt. Und 300 Millionen US-Dollar, das ist halt einfach eine gewaltige Summe. Und ja, diese ganze Erfahrung, die Guy gemacht hat in den letzten Dekaden am Kapitalmarkt, also ich glaube, das war wirklich, echt Premium-Content hier der Extraklasse, muss ich ganz ehrlicherweise sagen. Sozusagen, ich glaube, das kriegt man hier im deutschsprachigen Raum ziemlich selten geboten, dass also ein so großer, so renommierter Fondsmanager dann also auch wirklich exklusiv über seine Anlagestrategie und auch insbesondere so tiefgehend über einzelne Aktien spricht. Also ich hoffe, dieses Gespräch hat euch gefallen. Mich würde natürlich interessieren, ob ihr euch vorstellen könntet, dass ich hier auch versuche, mal anderweitige Investmentpersönlichkeiten, internationale Investmentpersönlichkeiten zum Gespräch hier zu bekommen. Also natürlich Warren Buffett, das wird wohl jetzt etwas schwierig zu bewerkstelligen sein. Aber möglicherweise gibt es da ja halt auch andere Namen, die ihr vielleicht jetzt auch so spontan im Kopf habt. Also muss natürlich auch alles so ein bisschen realistisch bleiben, ja. Also schreibt einfach mal rein in die Kommentare, ob ich hier auch weiterhin solche international tätigen Investmentgrößen für euch anfragen und bestenfalls dann also auch zum Gespräch bekommen soll. Das würde mich interessieren und ansonsten schreibt einfach mal rein, wie haltet ihr es aktuell mit der Nike, mit der LVMH und auch der Alphabet? Das würde mich sehr, sehr interessieren und jetzt keine weiteren Worte mehr von meiner Seite. Wir sehen uns am Dienstag schon wieder und bis dahin wünsche ich euch alles Gute. Euer Timo.